Hi, this is Marianne with the Sustainable Living Podcast. Today, Emily is bringing you an interview with Brian and Tucker from Eck Architects. My sound is really weird, but don't worry, Emily's interview is going to be much better. I'm traveling right now, so that's why I don't have my equipment with me. Before you hear from Emily, let me tell you very quickly about Eck Architecture and the people behind it. The founder and owner is Brian Eck. He was born in Parker, Colorado, and he went to the University of Colorado Boulder, where he got a bachelor's degree in science in environmental design and architecture. In his family, they have been building and fixing things as long as he can remember. His grandfather started his own successful home building business, and during his teenage years, he remembers his dad tinkering and building and doing lots of stuff, so he started very early on. When he was in Boulder, he met Tucker, and they were even roommates. After college, Brian moved back to Denver, and Tucker was going back and forth between Colorado and New York. So finally, after working different jobs, Brian decided to get into building tiny homes. As it so happens, Tucker moved back to Colorado and has experience in flipping and homes and finishing work. So the two of them decided to work together, and that is the group behind Eck Architecture now. And Tucker and Brian are the people you're going to listen to in the interview with Emily. Here they are. Enjoy.
Hello, and welcome to the Sustainable Living Podcast. I have Brian and Tucker today with Eck Architecture. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Hey, Emily.
We are excited because the tiny house movement is really growing here in Colorado, and I met these amazing builders at the Colorado Tiny House Festival. Let's start with just kind of getting to know, just basically how did you guys get into the tiny house business? What was kind of your inspiration?
Well, I went to school for architecture, and after graduating, never really got into doing too much architectural stuff, and always grew up building things. My family used to own haunted houses, and I missed doing that and got stuck behind a desk. And I started watching the tiny home shows and thought, man, I could easily do that. And just seemed so cool, and the whole idea of it just really struck a chord with me. So,
yeah, for me it was more that I saw. The first one that I saw, I can't remember when it was. It had to be 4 or 5 years ago. I saw something about it and just thought that's the coolest thing ever. I got to find a way to build one. And then when I saw that Brian was building one, I basically just said, hey, I'll come work for like a beer. Like I just want to be there. I want to like see it and be involved in it. So. And that turned, as soon as I saw it, as soon as I was there and in it, it was like a no-brainer. This is something I wanted to do.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited that you guys did because, the more the merrier in this movement, right?
For sure. Yeah,
exactly.
So moving forward, I know this is near and dear to my heart because jumping in as a dweller and jumping into this whole legalizing tiny house realm, I'm really intrigued by the codes for tiny houses. And we don't want to get too in depth for our listeners because, they're just sort of just more general. But as far as tiny house code goes, how do you see it moving forward? I know some are going the RV route, some are going the park model route, some are going the IRC, which is the residential code route. So where do you guys fit into this and how do you see it moving forward?
Yeah, so for us, when we started building, it was sort of, I think the IRC was more what we were trying to follow while also kind of incorporating what we thought and what we talked to about people who are engineers and stuff about how we do this and make it structurally sound and move it. But also we were always just kind of waiting for it to kind of gel, like for someone to say, all right, this is what it needs to look like and this is what you need to do and we're the people to call. And we think that whole development of a code system is going to be good for everyone. For us, it's not that we want to try to avoid those codes at all. We want to know that someone has designed a system that works and that's something that's going to be down the road, you can say, all right, I built it to this code, and now if I want to get insurance or a loan or I want to sell it or something, at least now I know I have it. And I think the way that they've done it now is good to incorporate the IRC stuff, which is a lot of it. I mean, most of it is you're going to be living in it. You want it to be safe, fire, and just a living space and moving around. But also there are some things with like the ANSI and the FPA, the stuff that's more RV stuff. They found a way to incorporate that in and sort of make it kind of wrap around the whole thing without just being an RV, which is not really what we were trying to do.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I know mine was built in 2015 by a professional builder in Minnesota, and it was built to the ANSI and FPA and RV. So yeah, he at that, it was kind of like the Wild West in 2015, and it was like, okay, just we'll do the best we can. Like, it's still got to go down the road, so it's kind of got to be RV, but at the same time, we want it to be above and beyond that. So
sure, I mean, there's a ton of value in that part of it too for people that want to use them to travel a lot, or before there was any other IRC code involved. But for us, I think it's the IRC and the incorporation of that is kind of more where we see the whole thing going, being more of a permanent residence and not a recreational part-time thing. So it's nice to have the combination of both and know that we're covered on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, these do have to go down the road, but also needs to be full-time living. So RV is not going to get us there, because the definition of RV is recreational vehicle, right? So
right. And
these need to be full-time.
You're not towing tiny homes every weekend unless you're a millionaire and can afford the gas to move these things. So that doesn't
I'm not
either.
So where do you see tiny homes fitting into this whole affordable housing? I being both of us are here in Colorado, but even across the country. I mean, affordable housing is an issue across the country. So how do you see tiny houses fitting in that scenario?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when I bought my first house, I was kind of fortunate. I was able to actually get into it when I could, but I was kind of in a good job and was able to get the money, whereas most kids now are getting out of college. They're over $100,000 in debt, or they're not going to college and they don't have the high pay rate. So they really can't afford. I mean, here in Denver, the median price of a home is probably around $400,000 now, and kids just can't afford that. So it'd be nice to have people have the option to buy a home for $50,000 to $100,000, somewhere in that price range, to kind of get their feet on the ground and not live in debt their whole life. So, and I think that applies to anywhere in the nation, whether even if homes are at 150,000, the jobs there probably aren't paying what they do here. So
yeah, and once they get these houses built, I dare ask, where do they put them?
Yep.
That's the $1 million question. I mean, I think following up on that, just the affordable housing thing, it's also, you feel bad for people that want to live somewhere and feel like, all right, I can't afford to live where I want to live, or I can't afford to even live near where I work. So, all right, I have a job in Denver, but now I have to go 30, 40, 70 miles out of town to even find a place that I can afford. And then I have to commute a couple hours. You deal with the traffic, the gas, the maintenance on your car, all those kind of things. So I think in an area that, especially that's booming, it's nice to have that like feeling like, all right, if there was a place that I could put them, like you're talking about, if there was a place in the city of Denver, close or somewhere, relatively convenient, you could have a place that you could afford, you could own, you could live there and not feel like you're just totally priced out of that market.
Yeah, excellent. No, you're absolutely right. And, I know we've been talking a little bit behind the scenes about working together to get these places to park them going together. So yep. I know our listeners have been excited. I've been talking about it for like 2 years now. So I know our listeners are excited to see how this pans out. And then, so let's say, someone comes to your door and they're like, hey, here's a tiny house I want. You design it. Everything looks good. What are some like ways that you kind of get over those hurdles of, financing and insurance and kind of how do you get them to that next step of purchasing a tiny house?
So we've been working with several banks now to try to get them kind of on our side as far as getting financing for our clients that are looking to build homes, and that's kind of the second biggest hurdle aside from where do you put these things. So we think we're kind of on the cusp now with a few companies that are actually start lending out this money. From what I can gather, most of our clients that come to us think that, oh, I'm going to get into a 30-year mortgage on a $70,000 home and it's only going to cost me $195 a month. And that's just really not the case. So I think banks are more looking at 5, 10, 15-year terms on these mortgages at a much higher interest rate than what you're seeing on a home. But that still allows people to get into the homes for much cheaper than what your typical mortgage rate is. So I know some clients have looked at doing personal loans, but when you take a 7-year personal loan and do it at $80,000, you might as well just buy a $400,000 home.
Yeah, for a lot of people, it's more the monthly cost than it is like the total upfront. So, we understand that. I think what's happening that is good in this direction is I think that seeing that the demand is there. We see it. You were at the tiny house show a couple weeks ago, and you see all these people coming out, and they're all asking, all right, how can I finance this? I think all those people get together, you go, if a bank sees that the demand is there, someone's going to want to be the first mover. There's a market there for it. And so just keeping that going, we feel like there is momentum building. There's a bunch of demand there. People want these and they want to find a way to finance them that works. And I think we're moving in that direction pretty quickly. We're even the short time we've been in this, we're starting to see financing, creative financing, some private stuff. And I think if you really want to do it, I think that you can find a way to get the money. But yeah, it is a hurdle right now. We're trying to find a way around it.
Just need to find a way to show banks that yes, you can make money off of this, because they know. I mean, right now money's cheap, so banks are making money off everything. So if we can show them they're making money off tiny homes, they'll be more on board.
Yeah, that actually really ties nicely into the next question, because I guess my intuition is that if we can kind of get these tiny homes certified in some sort of code and more standard, not standardized regulation in the sense of no freedom for design, but standardized enough so that insurance and banks can get on board. So how do you see the importance of regulation playing out here in the future?
I think the importance for regulation is good for not just us builders, but for the buyers too. Because, I mean, right now, I don't know how many tiny home builders are out there, but they pop up everywhere. And it'd just be, if I was a buyer, I'd be much more comfortable knowing that, okay, this builder is part of NOAA or one of the other regulatory systems. Because then you're actually getting a quality product that's inspected, built correctly. Because, I mean, I've been to a few shows now, and some of the stuff you see, it's like, wow, surprised they brought a home out here looking at it like this. And people walk through and they're like, oh, this is amazing. And it's like, it may look good, but the stuff really needs to be built correctly so people aren't getting hurt in these things, or someone doesn't die on the road from a house coming undone from a trailer.
Yeah, that's a good point, I think, too. It's like we have to keep all the experiences positive for people. So, we want people to be in homes, even if they're not ours. When somebody else sells a home, we always feel like, okay, they bought a home, a great one from this person who's a good builder. Like that's good for all of us. If they have a positive experience with it, it's just going to help build the momentum for us. So that's the kind of thing that those regulations and people getting in and finding a way to do it and do it legally. And with the inspection process, you have that. You can get insurance, you can get financing, and then even if you decide to sell it, you can say it's certified, it's this insured. There's we follow the regulations, and just how helping those transactions happen and making them positive for people is really good for the movement in general.
Yeah, have you gotten any feedback from the DIYers? Because I guess the do-it-yourself movement, I highly respect. I could never do it personally, but I highly respect it. But I also feel if we do have some sort of tiny house code, then people can still do it themselves, but they it's just like a regular house, right? Like you got to pull a permit, you have to have a licensed contractor, or at least, have it inspected, or,
Yeah,
how do you see the DIYers fitting in this scenario?
Well, the DIYers are great. I think it's awesome that people are doing it. I mean, I am first and foremost a DIYer, so I know I love what they're doing. I respect it a lot, and they have awesome ideas. I see some of the DIY ones, and I'm like, that's a really cool thing. We should try to work that in somewhere. So I think that having that opportunity is awesome for to have them be able to say, okay, maybe I'm not, I was never a builder, I was never a contractor, I'm not an engineer or something, but I can, I can follow a plan. I can have maybe a builder or somebody draw up a plan for me. I can follow it. I can go to this agency, they can inspect it. They can tell me that what I've done is correct. And then I can know that what's behind my walls, my plumbing, my electric, all that stuff is going to work. It's going to last a long time. And then you don't feel like you're driving around with this thing that is sort of, I hope nobody looks, I hope nobody checks it out. You're happy to have people come and look at it. And if you decide you wanted to, to put it in if you end up in an RV park or in one of these tiny house communities that's popping up, you feel like you have the options and you've been approved, which is a big thing for making it move forward without having to go through all sorts of extra loopholes with, is this safe? Is it legal? And all those other requirements.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because a lot of RV parks and tiny home communities popping up are saying, you either need to be insured or you need to be certified, or both. So that's a really great tip for those DIYers. And as far as, maybe there's some people, I'm sure we have listeners that are like, yeah, right, I'm never living in a tiny house. They were so small, I couldn't do it. I'm claustrophobic, which is fine. So for those people, what are some investment opportunities for them as far as tiny homes go?
yeah. So with one of our homes right now, we're currently Airbnb in it, and I mean it's getting a crazy turnout. So for anybody out there that has land or a potential backyard spot where you can stick a home, I know there's a couple counties here in Colorado that will allow it. You can buy a tiny home, put it out there, list it on Airbnb, VRBO, and it fills up pretty quick. We started doing it in February, and I think last month was our first month where we booked almost every single night aside from the tiny home show. I think booked all of this month, and I think there's only about 4 nights left next month. And the people come out and they love it, and it's a great revenue generator, and you can get your money back so fast from your initial investment, because you're making the same as you would if you were to buy a $300,000 home and Airbnb that.
And I think if you're someone that wants to build a community like that, I think that's for one, and you're someone that's coming in and saying, all right, I'm a developer, I have this money, I want to build this community. You're going to have some pull, you're going to have some credibility when it comes to, getting approval through whatever, your municipality that's going to approve it. And then you create this, creating that community and having it there. I think, again, it's just that whole idea of just getting some momentum and positive experiences out there with communities having tiny homes in them. If someone can get one somewhere, then some other city sees, okay, that works. And then maybe they say, oh, well, we don't have a space for a whole community, but we're going to allow people to have them, just in their driveways. And you can have one, you can host somebody in a tiny home. And it all kind of comes around, because then you end up providing, affordable housing in that city for someone that has a tiny home. And you're also, they're paying a rent for that parking space. So you're making that home more affordable for the homeowner. So it's sort of a double win situation here.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally attest to that, having been the second home on a property, and sharing the yard work and sharing the cost of utilities and everything is just sort of, it benefits everyone. So yeah, I definitely see the ADU, accessory dwelling unit, being a huge factor, especially in the more metro area, that probably is going to fit better than a community, just because the communities probably want a couple acres or so.
Right.
So what are kind of, for you guys as builders, kind of what are your inspirations or your hopes for the tiny house movement moving forward? What do you see happening here in the next few years?
I'm really hoping we get some strong regulations on it, and we start seeing counties and cities really get behind the movement and start seeing the dollar signs that they can be making off of it, and then, just start mass producing these things so people can have a way of life without a mortgage over their head for 30 years.
Yeah, I see it. I already see it kind of going in the right direction. I think what's exciting about it now is that we're starting to see this be something like, at these shows, you see people, it's all right. It's people that are there. They know what tiny houses are. They want one, and they're there to look. But a lot of people that are coming out that are just, I've watched, I've seen the show on TV or something. I want to come see what it looks like. And they walk in and they are amazed. I could live here. I could really see myself doing this. So allowing that to be, it is a niche thing right now, but I think allowing people to see that this is like a real home. This is not just like a, kind of a toy thing that I have. I think that is really exciting to see that become a little more mainstream, and having the IRC code coming in, that's sort of giving some legitimacy to it. And with financing, I've talked to insurance companies that are writing policies for them now. That part is really exciting to make. It feels like it's starting to catch a little bit of momentum and become something that is, that's going to put the pressure on the cities to look at how they are going to approve them, and put some pressure on, your politicians that need to, to make laws around them. So that's exciting, and I hope that continues, and I think that's the direction we're going in.
So for those of the listeners that are interested in checking out more about your particular build, what kind of sets you guys apart? What makes your designs and your tiny homes unique or special?
For us, it's really focusing on what it's like to live in one, as opposed to more, I think it's easy to put it on a piece of paper and say, okay, I want to have everything. I want to have all these cabinets and all this storage and all this. I want to include everything that I have in my house, just a tiny version. And I think sometimes it ends up being just too much. I think part of it is, I think we try to design around, all right, what do you really need? It's which can be different for everybody. Do you really need cooking space? Do you really need storage space? Do you really just want living space and, bedrooms? And how high do you want your lofts to be, and all those kind of things, to maximize the time that you're in it, to enjoy that time. The whole idea, I think, is to spend more time outside. So how can you efficiently and comfortably do the things you need to do inside, and not necessarily try to pack everything in? The comments we get a lot from the people that come into ours is, wow, this is the same size trailer, and it's the same height, it's the same width, and this feels like so much more space. And that really is, when we hear that means we're nailing it with what we're trying to do.
Oh, I love that. Well, I mean, you have to come over to my house, because we definitely crammed everything in there.
Yeah.
But we have, but like you said, though, they're custom. They're customized. That's the beauty of tiny homes, right? Is that the customer knows they hopefully have been in a couple tiny homes, like you said, like the Airbnbs, and they know what they need. And we homeschool, and we're having more kids, and currently we have 4 pets. We started with 5, and so, we knew we needed a lot of storage, but I love that, you guys do. It is about simplicity, and it is about customizing. So that's exciting. I'm excited to see more of your work here coming out. So as people are looking for you guys, as far as, your websites and your social media, where can they find you if they'd like to start their tiny house journey?
So we got our website at www.eckarchitecture.com. And then we have our Facebook page, which is Eck Architecture. And then our Instagram tag is Eck_architecture.
Wonderful. We'll be sure to link all those in the podcast notes. Well, thank you guys so much. Any last words of wisdom for our listeners?
Hang in there. The movement's coming.
Yeah, I would say if you're interested at all, please make the phone calls, contact some people in your community and get some information, figure out where they are, and ask some questions, not just like, what are the rules? What have people come in and asked about this before? What did you tell them? Is this something you've heard about? Has this come up at your board meetings? Anything like that? I think that's that's good for everyone. Get that information and, share it with people and try to help everyone out in that way. So that'd be my advice.
Oh, thank you guys so much again, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
All right, thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks.